little bit because I can't. Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Hart. So I've got a few words to say about him that Sue Miller helped me out with. Dr. Hart has been practicing audiology and addressing the hearing needs of his patients for over 30 years. He received his master's degree in audiology from SUNY Geneseo and his doctorate in audiology from the University of Florida. In 2007, Dr. Hart was awarded the Distinguished Clinical Achievement Award from the New York State Speech Language Hearing Association. His professional activities include serving 2 terms as a member of the New York State Licensure Board, as well as past leadership positions in regional and state associations. Dr. Hart has been a supporter of our chapter since 1984, when he served as one of our first professional advisors. And when our chapter hosted the 1988 National Convention in Rochester, he oversaw the entire exhibit hall. On his more adventurous side, Dr. Hart served as a navigator and co-driver of his friend Tom Megan's 1965 Porsche in the Targa, Newfoundland road race of September 2009. Completing the 1,410-mile course, their goal was raising awareness of hearing loss and money for HLAA and Finger Lakes Regional Lions Hearing Foundation. In 2011, he ran in the Marine Marathon in Washington, D.C., and raised $3,100 for our scholarship fund. He said his favorite part was at the finish, when a Marine placed the finishing medal around his neck, shook his hands, and said, "Congratulations, sir." Sue Miller remembers that when Dr. Hart spoke to our chapter in 2016, his comments were the ones that inspired us to create a hope session based on what the Appleton, Wisconsin chapter was doing. He commented that HLAA is where people with hearing loss have the opportunity to talk about their challenges and frustrations with hearing loss. He inspired us to ask Joe Kozlowski to lead our hope sessions. 5 years later, hope is still an important part of our Rochester HLAA chapter. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephen Hart, who will talk about 2 aspects of hearing loss: hearing aid insurance and over-the-counter hearing aids. Dr. Hart.
Thank you, Barbara. It was a great introduction, and it brought back memories of my working with you guys for many years. And also, I think the other thing about the best part of that marathon, not only getting the medal, was finishing the marathon. I was totally exhausted, believe me. But yeah, it's good to be here with you guys today. The agenda was to discuss hearing aid insurance, and as you probably know, things are in a state of flux with some aspects of it, as well as the over-the-counter rule that's currently being commented on by the FDA and should be implemented, in the next 6 or 8 months. So I guess I will start with the hearing aid insurance. As you know, there are a myriad of plans, some that offer partial coverage, some that offer full coverage. And, we've been also being entertained by our legislators, our national legislators, in the Build Back Better legislation that right now does not look too promising, but we thought maybe we were going to get some benefits through Medicare for hearing aids with that. And hopefully that'll still come to fruition. But it's amazing that one senator can stop this whole process. But I guess that's the way our legislators work. As you probably know, the Build Back Better plan had a provision in it for hearing aid coverage for those that were that had Medicare, and the coverage was we weren't sure what the amount was. Maybe you guys know. I didn't know what the amount was, but apparently it would renew every 5 years, and it was designated towards severe to profound hearing loss. And I think it got that designation because of the over-the-counter law that's currently being implemented. That program right now that whole legislation right now is on hold. They have to have 50 senators to agree to it, and they had agreement, and it passed the Assembly or the House of Representatives, but Senator Manchin has opposed it and essentially kill the bill for now. So hopefully something is going to transpire in the next few months, and hopefully that will also include the coverage for hearing aids that they had proposed in the early legislation. But that's what I know now about that, and unfortunately, that's kind of on hold right now. Getting to some plans that do have coverage, there are different plans out there that have partial, some have almost full coverage, not very many, but some have full coverage. Usually people that have the more higher end plan through Excelis and sometimes through MVP, they sometimes have full hearing aid coverage, and we don't see it very often, but it is out there. And generally they will allow 100% coverage for hearing aids or 90% coverage for hearing aids, which is a very good plan. Just as an aside, the employees, or at least most of the employees at Wegmans, have a very good Blue Cross and Blue Shield coverage through Excelis of South Carolina. And we see a fair amount of those patients that come in, and I believe their coverage is around 90%. So they have almost full coverage for that. Some of the other more common, more popular plans around here is the Medicare Advantage plans. There are ones through Excelis, through MVP, and those two insurance companies network with a company called True Hearing, which is a third-party plan that offers what they call a select plan, where they have 2 levels of hearing aids that people can buy through them. And usually that's through a dispenser, and pay either $6.99 or $9.99 per ear. So the pricing is very good. The product limitation is fairly limited, and they do that for a reason. The True Hearing is a company, the national company, that's also owned by a parent company that owns Cigna, which used to be Siemens, and they offer 2 of their Siemens products at that discounted rate. So that's currently for people that have Excelis and MVP managed Medicare plans. Another variation of that is one through United Healthcare, and United Healthcare has a plan that also sells hearing aids at discounted rates, and does not limit it to 2 products or 1 manufacturer. They have all the manufacturers in a wide range of products for that. So that's a little bit more comprehensive plan. They have some hearing aids that are very inexpensive. The lowest level plan they do through mail order, and then they go up the scale to working with dispensers and having entry level or mid-level or high level hearing aid technology. So United Healthcare is a plan, and they tend to be pretty popular in Rochester. I mean, all of these Advantage plans through Medicare aggressively market, their benefits to the community. And I'm sure you guys all know, I'm on Medicare now, so I know too. All the mailers and the commercials you see, and they're trying to get you to sign up with their plan. So one of the ways they do that is to offer benefits with the Medicare Advantage, and that's why it's called Medicare Advantage. So those are some of the Medicare Advantage plans that are available. I think Aetna, well, I know Aetna has a plan now that offers hearing aids, and they used to give a dollar amount, which was actually a pretty liberal dollar amount for hearing aids. And just this past fall, they changed to networking with a company called Nations Hearing, where you have to buy the hearing aids through them. And then you generally have a local dispenser that helps with the fitting. So those are kind of what we have in our community, the Medicare Advantage plans. Another plan that is pretty common around our area is the Empire plan. And Empire stands for Empire State, and that's basically available to many people that are state employees or state retirees. And they have coverage every 4 years for people for hearing aid benefit, and the benefit is $3,000. That's available every 4 years. And then one more I'm going to mention that is out there is the postal plan for letter carriers or people that work at the post office or federal employees. And some of you may have that. And that has coverage, I believe, every 4 years, maybe 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And their benefit is either $2,500 or $3,000 that you can access every 3 to 4 years. So that's the current state of insurance coverage out there that we deal with. Of course, Medicaid also is a plan, and I should mention that, and that's for people that qualify financially for Medicaid. And a lot of Medicaid now is going into managed Medicaid plans, which actually are a little bit better to work with from us as the dispenser because it gives us a little more flexibility. And they have hearing aid coverage. The traditional Medicaid plan, if you have that, will only cover 1 ear. And we have 2, but they only cover 1, and it's always been that way. Some of the managed Medicaid plans will cover both ears. Sometimes we have to write an appeal for that or give justification for it, but it's usually an easier process to go through to get coverage for people that are in need of hearing devices. So why don't I kind of open, we'll stop there before I get into over the counter, and maybe you can have some questions for me that I can answer regarding insurance coverage.
The picture right now just shows you, Steve, so it's challenging to see who might have their hand raised.
What you have to
Charlie,
do
can we go back to seeing everybody so that we can see who might
is,
be
Sue,
raising
what you
their
have to
hand?
do is go up to the right-hand corner where it says view.
Okay, who has a question for Steve? Barb asked if I would moderate. Ann Owen, who is a longtime member of our chapter and who moved out of state and who still supports our chapter. Did you move to New Hampshire or Vermont? And you're muted, my dear. You're muted. Can't hear you. There.
Okay, I'm Vermont.
Good to see you.
Yes, nice to be here. Dr. Hart, I have a question. I've got MVP, and I've noticed that it has the true hearing, and I was glad to hear you define what that was, which is very limited. But if you were to choose one of their hearing aids, do they then support your work with an audiologist?
Yes. So audiologists that are signed up as providers for them. The audiologist does the dispensing. The hearing aid is ordered through True Hearing. The patient pays True Hearing, and the hearing aids are sent to their dispensers. And then you get a limited amount of visits that come with that. But yes, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, and I also just got the booklet for this coming year. And I thought I recalled something about $3,000. So I'm going to have to go back and check that and to see if that's a cash piece that comes with it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, does anyone else have a question? Steve, it looks like you did such a good job of presenting all the information. I don't, are there any questions in the, Charlie, are there any questions in the chat box?
Not yet. I know Margaret was going to try to send something in chat, or she could ask it verbally.
Margaret, you're muted.
Okay, am I on now?
You are, yes, you
Okay,
are.
great. Happy New Year, everyone. And thanks so much, Dr. Hart, for doing this. I've been wearing hearing aids for, I think, 21 years now. And it's only once when an audiologist said something to me about the fact that while they're not covered by insurance, they are considered durable medical goods. So they can go, the cost of them can go against your deductible. Can you talk about that at all, or is that true? And I'm wondering why it took me, and this happened only about 5 years ago. So is that something new or?
Well, that's a good question, Margaret. My understanding, and you know, I'm not 100% sure about this. If you had a benefit for even some coverage for hearing aids, then it would go against your deductible. But I really haven't heard of them going towards your deductible if you don't have a benefit. But I can check on that. And you know, certainly you can too. I mean, you can call the insurance and say, you know, I have this insurance, there's no coverage for it. Does it apply towards my deductible? And they'll be able to tell you right over the phone.
Okay. And it wasn't for hearing aids per se, and it looks like my battery's running low, but it wasn't hearing aids per se, but it was considered a durable medical good. So it was categorized differently. So maybe it's just the way they submitted it. I don't know.
Well, there's only one way to submit it. I mean, they use codes that we have to submit it with.
Okay.
But so, you know,
Okay, so maybe hearing aids is
Yeah.
considered a.
yeah. So, but certainly they'll tell you, you know, and and sometimes when you call customer service, sometimes I tell people to call a couple of times and get different people just to see, you know, and if you get different answers, then you want to ask to speak to a supervisor and, you know, get the right answer.
Oh, I'm good at doing that. Okay. Thank you very
Mark.
much.
You bet.
I gotta go plug
Okay.
in my computer.
Any other questions for Dr. Hart before we go on to the next?
I just want to comment. I have MVP also, and the thing is, you have to go through True Hearing, and you can only, I think, get what they say you can have. And I have a different kind of hearing aid, I believe, that isn't covered that. So, and I don't even think my audiologist handles True Hearing. So I really don't think it's fair the way they have it set up. I think they should personally allow a certain amount of money and never mind where you go through. It just let you decide.
I agree, because that doesn't.
I really don't like it.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So I guess what I would say to that, Barb, is, you know, let your insurance company know you don't like that benefit, because that's the only way it's going to change if they hear from their subscribers. You know, I mean, True Hearing is owned by a hearing aid manufacturer. So to me, that's a conflict of interest, you know, because they try to promote their products.
Right.
But you let, you know, Excellus or MVP know, and maybe even HLAA as an organization, you know, can lobby for, you know, a benefit that is fairer to, you know, all of you, you know, and not just, cookie cutter, something that's in a box, you know, that
Right.
you
I mean,
take or don't
if
take.
you have more severe hearing, I think there are other hearing aids other than what they offer that may be better suited for you. I mean,
No,
that's my
no
opinion,
question,
but-
no question. You know, they used to offer like a benefit, and you guys can remember, like $600 every 3
Right.
years or
Yes,
whatever,
they did.
you know, and so, and I think they're still paying True Hearing something for this. So I don't know if it's, you know, I don't think it's less expensive for them, but I think it's just, you know, they look at it as something that may be better for the consumer as well. You know, for some it may be, but for many it limits them what they can get.
Right, right, right. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Dr. Hart? Okay, I don't, is anyone's hands raised that we're not seeing? Okay, Dr. Hart, looks like it's time for you to go on to the next topic.
So over-the-counter hearing aids is another interesting proposal that's taken a long time from the initial writing of the legislation to implementation, because it still isn't implemented. That was, I think, one of the first laws that our former president signed into law back, and it was at least 4 years ago. So, you know, this was written legislatively, and basically what it's doing is opening up people, allowing them to get hearing aids without going through traditional channels. And it was originally designed for mild hearing loss, and kind of an analogy to that is kind of buying reading glasses, which we now can get at, you know, a drugstore or many places for, you know, initial levels of hearing loss. So over-the-counter hearing aids were initially thought of in that vein, and then it has evolved into fairly, I don't want to say controversial, but there's different points of view. And one of the points of view is coming from, you know, the professional community. The other point of view is coming from the people that are selling over-the-counter hearing aids. And some of the names are pretty big names, like Bose, BOSE, that makes speakers and all kinds of headphones. They're going to be a big player in that. And even companies like Apple and, you know, large tech companies are looking at incorporating that into some of their products. So after the law was signed, then there was a process of writing regulations for it, and it was a collaborative effect with people in academia, in audiology and ear, nose, and throat, as well as some of these consumer electronic companies that plan on selling these products. And then it was a committee, and then they submitted it to the FDA. And when COVID hit, everything just stopped for probably 2 years. So nothing transpired. It regained its momentum, you know, during the campaign. And, you know, this is one of the only things that we haven't really seen presidents talk too much about legislation in the past, but Joe Biden has really pushed this. He did it. He actually promoted it back either just before he was elected or just after he elected. And that kind of prompted the process to start again, which it really should have started again. But it was originally thought of in 2016. The final laws that now we're looking at for comments were developed, and I've just got a couple of notes here. They were written in October of 2021, which is just a few months ago. Those are the draft current regulations. And right now we're in a period of comment from consumers like you, professionals like me, trade groups like hearing aid manufacturers, trade groups like Bose and Apple and things like that, to comment on the regulations And then it goes, once the comments are done and the FDA has responded to the comments, it goes into a rulemaking, and there's, I think, 60 days to review that. So what I've heard recently is that it should become law sometime in the fall of 2022, which is, 9 or 10 months from now. Okay. But there's an opportunity for anybody to comment on the regs up until the 18th of January. So we just got a few weeks left if anybody wants to comment to the FDA. All comments are read by them and go into their database, and they respond not individually, but they respond to the global questions that the comments brought up. So some of the things in here that I think you guys should be aware of that are in the current regulations is that for people to get over-the-counter hearing aids, they're designed now for mild to moderate hearing loss, not just mild hearing loss, but mild to moderate. There's no testing required. It's basically a self-diagnosis. So, a person can get tested, but they don't have to be tested. They can, contact a manufacturer or a consumer electronics group. And sometimes they may do over the phone testing. Sometimes they may do questionnaire testing. But, that a lot of people have concerns about self-diagnosis for treating hearing loss, because as you know, sometimes people have hearing loss and they just have wax in their ears. And if nobody looks in their ears or takes out the wax, they're going to get a hearing aid that's going to whistle every time they put it in their ear. So, that's an issue that some people have concerns about. The other couple of issues that I think you should be aware of is that basically the over-the-counter legislation right now, currently the way it's written, does away with state laws protecting hearing aids. Okay. Now it may not end up that way, but right now state laws are gone in terms of buying over-the-counter hearing aids. And, I know, HLAA has been pretty active in molding state laws for consumer protection over the years. And, I've been involved with it over the years, and it does. There are safeguards in that. For instance, one of the safeguards is a return privilege. Be able to return the hearing aid within 45 days. That's not in the current regulations, to be able to return an over-the-counter hearing aid. That's not to say some companies may not offer that, but they don't have to offer it the way it's written right now. So one of the areas of concern that we have for that, and from our perspective, is there's a gain regulation that we promoted, or the industry promoted, of not exceeding 110 decibels of gain, and which is a fairly safe gain number to make sure that people aren't being over amplified. And it was changed to 120 decibels. So that's currently in the regs, and there's a lot of comments on that 120 decibels is too loud. And a lot of people feel pretty passionate about that that could actually have some effect on hearing. And it could also have people that really should get tested and medically checked and audiologically checked, prevent them from having that done. So, as with any regulation, there's always pros and cons. I personally don't think over-the-counter hearing aids are bad. I think they're good. I think they're going to let more people access products and get people in earlier with products, and they'll be less expensive. But I think, there's also areas that people may be harmed by not having good regulations in. I think, state laws shouldn't be done away with. Return privileges shouldn't be done away with. I also agree that people shouldn't self-diagnose their hearing loss or do, hearing screenings through the phone, because just hearing through the phone affects, the test. So, it's a big thing, and it's going to happen. And we would just like to see it happen in a way that we still have consumer protections. So just, a date for you guys to consider. And I know that HLAA initially responded nationally, and there is a website you can go to that's a super long address if you want to respond, but you might want to check with your legislative chair and see if, they have responded to the FDA comment periods, because I think that's extremely important for consumers, professionals, everybody that's involved with hearing care to respond to. So that's kind of my overview on over-the-counter hearing aids. And I'll be happy to entertain some questions on that from you guys now.
Okay, I have a comment about consumer protection. I remember many, many years ago, a man came into one of our chapter meetings, and he had gone to someone who just sells hearing aids. It was not an audiologist. It was just a hearing aid dispenser. The hearing aid dispenser said, "Oh, you must have a hearing loss," fitted him with a hearing aid. And it turned out he had a tumor in his ear, probably an acoustic neuroma.
Yep.
And he never knew. And eventually they realized it was not a hearing loss that was caused by the normal way. And he was the police sergeant for the Highland Department in Rochester. So he was a very smart, well-educated, capable individual, but he never had a test. And then the whole one side of his face ended up being paralyzed because he waited so long. So self-diagnosing is very dangerous, as you have said. Who else has a comment? Yes, Ann Owen again.
Yes,
And then Lori Gaddy after that.
Dr. Hart, do you have a link to the site where we can look at these regs and comment?
I don't. I have, what I can do is I have the address, which is like super long. And maybe I can talk to Charles about getting that to him, and then he can send it out. So all you guys can comment on that.
Yeah.
So what I'll do maybe is just text it. I can take a picture of it and text it to Charles, and then he can, or email it. He can link it on there, if that works, Charlie.
Yeah, keep in mind, I'm only able to send it out to everyone that registered, which is 210 people. I'm not able to send it out to just the attendees, but that will work. I'm sure everybody should get that link.
Yep. Charlie, what is your is it okay to text it to you, or should I email it?
You should email it.
Okay, and just give me your email again, because yours is in my spam.
Yeah. It's all lowercase, all one word, chazjohnstone@hotmail.com.
So CHAS or
Yes.
JOHNSTONE@hotmail.com.
Correct.
Okay. Great. I'll get it out to you today.
Okay.
Okay, Ann, are you all set with your question? Ann Owen, are you all set? That was your, are you all
Yes,
set?
I am. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, Lori Gaddy, good to see you. And please unmute yourself. And what is your question for Dr. Hart?
Well, Dr. Hart mentioned that the hearing aids over the counter has decibels at 120. 110 to 120, wouldn't it be for more profound hearing loss?
Not necessarily for profound, because that goes up to 130 or 135, but it's 120 decibels is really loud.
Yeah.
So, that's why we think it shouldn't be above 110, just as a safeguard for people. Again, these are being marketed to mild to moderate hearing loss, and there's no way that people with mild to moderate hearing loss are going to need more power than 110 decibels.
Right. Okay.
Okay, who else has a question? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay, I'm still watching. And Dr. Hart, I think it's very commendable as a doctor of audiology that you comment that you really think they might be beneficial. I think that's wonderful to hear you. You must be very secure and you must be so busy that you're not concerned at all that you're going to lose any of your clientele. So that's very commendable and to hear you say that. Charlie Johnstone.
I want to point out, we have a question in the chat. If you could open that up.
Oh, thank you. The question is, Dr. Hart, this is from Don Bataille. Dr. Hart, can you discuss the benefit of hearing aid insurance against loss or damage? I must have, yes, that was just sent.
So most hearing aid manufacturers, you receive coverage for loss and damage, and it usually comes with a deductible, but a lot less than the full cost, and which coincides with your warranty. So many hearing aid manufacturers give you a 3-year warranty. So usually you get that benefit with the warranty, but there is a deductible if you lost it. Now, what I tell people is if they want insurance for loss and damage, wait till after their 3 years, and then they can look at third-party companies to do that, or even their homeowners insurance. Very often you can buy a personal article floater, which is a kind of a waiver, or not a waiver, but an additional insurance. Like, for instance, you can buy that for jewelry, you can buy it for hearing aids or other collectibles or whatever. And it's usually pretty reasonable. But because you're getting it as a benefit with the hearing aids, you don't need it for the length of the warranty.
That's a very interesting comment. And I'm wondering if this would ever be just a small short article in our chapter newsletter that goes out, reaches almost 600 to 800 people. And today there are about 33 people who have attended the meeting. So is there anyone, Dr. Hart, I hesitate to ask you, maybe your son or someone else who works in your office, who would ever be willing to write a brief article on what you just said about third-party insurance and waiting the 3 years? I think that's very interesting.
Right. Yeah. If you send me an email, Sue, I can do it, because it's not going to be that long of an article, but I will do it. Just remind me and I'll get it out to you in a week or so.
Oh, that would be wonderful. That'd be great. Thank you, because that's such an interesting comment. Okay, who else? Let me see, are there any other hands raised? I guess everybody is so content to just sit and listen to you. What else could you ever talk about? I don't see anyone else raising their hand. And I don't see anything in the chat. What are some of the main concerns when people come to see you? What are some of the main concerns they have about their hearing loss?
Well, I saw a question from Fred. So Fred, you want to ask a question? You're muted, Fred.
I missed that. Thank you.
Fred, can you unmute? There you go.
I've always been a big believer in assistive devices. Now, this is something that I feel that a lot of people, just like the glasses that you mentioned that you can buy in the drugstore, it almost brings it back to what your eyesight was. But as I understand it, hearing loss will never come back to the way it was. And a lot of people don't realize that they need assistive devices, such as a remote microphone, which I'm using at the moment so I can better hear the sound coming from my computer. And there's so many of these assistive devices for use on the telephone, for example, and so on. And I don't know what degree that your dispensers talk to the patients about assistive devices and make them aware of what's available, such as our demo center, which is very important because it's unbelievable of what is available, especially if you have a smartphone and you can pick up all kinds of information that's helpful for your hearing aids.
I agree. And I think it's great that you guys have a demo center for that. And, you know, we're involved with that as well on with our patients.
And Dr. Hart, I know I'm aware of one thing that you've done that I'm not sure many people are aware. You have underwritten the cost of paying to have the 4 of the 5 theaters at the little theater all be looped. And you've done that, haven't you?
Yep, we have a few years ago. We were happy to do it.
That's wonderful that you did that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Do you see anybody's hand raised that I'm not seeing?
I do not.
No.
So,
Okay. So what do people?
well, I see one.
Oh,
Lauren,
wait.
I saw Lauren's hand raised, and then
Yeah, it's not a question, but a comment. I really appreciate the overview you gave us of insurance.
oh, you're welcome.
I think we all had maybe bits and pieces of that information, but that was just a nice comprehensive overview. And we often have people asking us that same questions. What do you recommend? What do you think about true hearing? What do you know about this or that regarding insurance, you know, on your Medicare or regular insurance plan. So that's a big help to us as well. Thank you.
So Art, did you have a question?
Yeah, doctor, thanks for coming over and helping us out today. Do you have any thoughts about how the consumer can determine if he has mild or moderate hearing versus a more serious problem with his hearing? In other words, I see a lot of advertising coming down the pike from various companies, some of whom that nobody's ever heard of before, and they're going to be selling their wares that you can go in and buy over the counter. How does the consumer know what the hell he's buying, you know? And do you see anything in the industry that would give the buyers some indication of quality, you know? You know, in some types of equipments, there's certifications and so forth that give an indication that this thing has been run through a lab and it makes it you know, has some quality for what it purports to do, versus just in a nice box with a nice ad, and you get it, and it's maybe an amplifier instead of a hearing aid.
I think that the regs will address some of that. I'm afraid that it's not going to address all of that, and I don't know how it can. You know, I mean, obviously, the best thing is, at least I would tell patients, if they're going to get one of those, at least get an evaluation by somebody qualified to do that, and then you've got a baseline. You know, rather than try and do a evaluation over the phone, where a phone bandwidth is so narrow you can't even test some of the higher frequencies. But yeah, I really don't know, Art. I guess we'll have to see what comes out in the regs, but that's why I think it's good for everybody, especially consumers, to comment on that.
Yeah. Well, if you went into anything where you can help us to understand what's coming, so we can kind of build it into what we're trying to do, that would be most helpful.
Yeah. I think I may know it when you know it, to be honest with you. You know, they don't pre-release stuff to us, but if I do, I will definitely share it with you.
Yeah, yeah. I lived through the cell phone revolution because I worked for a phone company.
Yep.
In the beginning, there was a lot of stuff coming out that just wasn't up to snuff at all.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of companies, they went in the business, they were there for a couple of years, they pulled in a lot of money, and then they just evaporated. They went away, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Hopefully that's not going to happen too much with this.
Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Okay, yes. Okay, Margaret, Margaret, and then Anne.
Based on what you just said and the importance, and I guess it's because I suffer with hearing loss that's so dramatic that it's like top of mind for me all the time. And whenever I'm talking to people, I recommend that they see a professional. And I feel like we as a chapter has a responsibility to communicate that to people. Do you have any suggestions on how we can do a better job of it, other than, you know, I don't know. I'm almost thinking that, especially with the onset of over-the-counter stuff, it's become more important for us to speak, you know, from our experience and our network of professionals and experience to encourage people. And at the same time, you're kind of between a rock and the hard place. If they're gonna, you know, if you're taking the time to test them, you know, maybe it will be fee-based or something. I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit unsure of the best way to it from terms of a professional speaking. How would you advise us to advise people?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to contact them, and I'll get the site over to Charlie, and then maybe collectively the chapter speak as one voice, and then maybe national speak as one voice. So they hearing it from a myriad of consumers that are very tuned in to, you know, to this field. Yeah, and we do a lot of testing where we don't fit hearing aids, so we have no problem seeing a person because we get reimbursed for it for just a test. And you know, sometimes later on down the road they come back to us, but you know, that's not a problem for us. We get compensated for our time.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So, but I will get that out to Charlie, and I got time for one more question. Then I'm sorry, but I do have to run. I've got a patient in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to have a 5-minute lunch and then get back to work. But was it Ann? You had another question?
Yeah. You said that these aids are to address mild to moderate loss, and I
Correct.
would think you would need different aids for each condition. Is that correct? Or are the aids, or does the consumer have to adjust the aids in some ways? I mean, I don't quite understand how that would work.
They may be able to program them with their smartphone or something like that. Okay, so you know, there'll be some variability in that. I'm not sure how it'll happen, but there'll be some programmability into that.
Okay. It seems to me that HLAA could do really well to put some guidelines together so that when you start getting calls, as I'm sure you're going to as soon as these things are out there,
Mm-hmm.
that there's kind of a standard procedural way to go at this. Have you been tested? Has it been determined that you actually have hearing loss and not some other problem? Okay, you know, just get them, because if they haven't thought about that, they really won't know that that's how you begin. And that way you're not confrontational with them or anything else. You're starting to offer them a path forward. to begin to figure this out. And eventually they may just wind up going back to an audiologist.
Yep, good idea.
Folks,
Charlie?
real quick, with Bruce's help, I'm just sending a reduced size address. It's created in a website called Tiny URL. And that should take you to the FDA commentary page.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I won't send that to you. That's really good.
Yeah, it's in the
Great,
chat.
Charlie.
It's in the chat.
Okay, Dr. Hart, you need to have your lunch.
Yes,
And we thank you so much.
Yeah, my
Barb, as
pleasure.
The person
you,
who
Dr. Hart.
introduced.
was wonderful.
Yeah,
Oh.
Don't forget
great.
your evaluation forms.
Okay. I will not. And thank you guys, and have a good day, and we'll look
Oh, you're
forward to
great.
seeing you
Thanks
later,
so
okay?
much, Dr. Hart. Take care.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah,
Art?
and
Okay, Art.
I just want to comment on what Ann was talking about. People getting started. One of the things that Dan and Joe and I are talking about is to put a course together to help people walk through this. And we have that course out through our website on YouTube, available 24/7. Not a very long course, but a course of here's the things you should consider before you go and buy that hearing aid. And the fact that you're getting into a long-term relationship and so forth. Because my view is if we get the people in the right relationships with hearing aid manufacturer and then an audiologist, and it goes forward as people get older, they're going to need more help. So they're building a long-term relationship. But anyhow, this is some of the thinking we're going through. Because this is all new things. Now here's the crux though. Here's the problem. First of all, we got to figure out what we ought to be telling people they ought to do before they buy the hearing aid. And the other thing is, how do we get to the people who even know that we exist and we got something to offer them in terms of advice? That's always the problem that we're dealing with here in HLA. How do we get to people? How do we get to more people that are really customers of what we have to offer? Because I see this as a very market destructive, it's a dislocation in the marketplace of what has been happening in the past. And it's going to shift things around a bit, but it can be an opportunity too. So I just want to comment on that we aren't working on this, but we're kind of, just stabbing into the future that we aren't really aware of. So that's my story. But I just got to share with you that when I started working on cell phones, some of the executives of the phone company didn't know why anybody went on a phone in the car to begin with. And maybe we shouldn't even get the license. And of course, now there are more cell phones in existence than there are landline phones. So it shows you what 40 years will do in technology. Disruptive technologies change marketplaces. And please fill out the evaluation forms. Don't forget to do that. And don't hesitate to comment on the business section part, the first half hour, if you have ideas how we can make that more interesting. Because the one problem with Zoom is, I talk in Zoom for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If I'm talking in person and I've got 40 people in front of me talking, I can read the audience. Are they responding? Are they getting bored or whatever? Very hard to do on Zoom. Just got to tell you that. So let us know through the evaluation form, and I'll shut up now.
I'm going to stop the recording, just so you know.
Oh, you did. I just wanted to comment. I don't know if you saw my note, but that link that Charlie sent to the